clarify a statement I made toward the end of my opening statement. The State Department has thousands of experts in American law. You don't particularly need more. We also have experts in international law. Those experts help us persuade Western countries of the righteousness of our positions. I've been pushing on the State Department for, I think, the better part of a year to hire an expert in Islamic law. And the response I get is, well, we hope Islamic jurists will issue statements that are helpful to us, and we'll just call them and ask them to come up with something on their own. Or now and then we'll call a professor of Islamic law, we'll get all the information, we don't need to hire anybody. And so I analogize that to what you would do if you were trying to persuade an American jurist. Would you contact an American jurist and just say, my cause is just, please come up with the legal theories that support me? Would you just rely on hiring whatever free advice you could get from a professor on the phone? Or would you hire somebody who was an expert in American law to try to get an American jurist to issue a statement helpful to you? It is incredibly important that we get Islamic scholars, experts, and jurists to issue rulings adverse to ISIS and favorable to the United States. It is about time that the State Department hire its first Islamic legal expert to work full-time on that, maybe a couple. And it's time that at least somebody be hired at the State Department, not because they went to a fancy American school or because they did well on the Foreign Service exam. Ambassador, Security Council Resolution 2178 requires UN members to criminalize those who go to Syria and Iraq to fight with the extremists. Have our European allies, particularly visa waiver countries, complied with that?
If I may just comment briefly on your first point about Islamic lawyers, Islamic scholars.
Could I ask the Ambassador please to move the mic closer to him so we can hear? Thank you.
I've got limited time, so I'll ask you to address my question first.
Your question about the...
Yes, Resolution 2178, yes. UN Security Council.
We have demarched all of our partners through our embassies in Europe and elsewhere to engage with these countries on implementing 2178.
Can you provide for the record a list of which visa waiver countries are in compliance, which have promised to become in compliance, and which are not in compliance that have made no very serious promise to us?
We've had 2 months, sir, since the resolution was passed, and legislative processes in many countries.
I'm just asking for a chart.
I would be happy to provide a list of countries.
Their legislative process may be slow, but I know your staff will be fast and get a chart for our record, and then we'll identify those countries. Likewise, if you could provide a second chart of Islamic, particularly Arab states, particularly the 5 the gentleman from Illinois identified as the major senders of foreign fighters, whether they have passed laws that would criminalize going to Syria or Iraq and fighting with al-Nusra or ISIS.
I'd be happy to do that.
But I assume that, I take it from your answer that we're doing everything we can to push our friends in the Arab world and Europe
and there are countries that have already in place, as we do, laws that prohibit, that criminalize, for example.
Are there any countries that have said, no, we'll just let these folks come back and we'll monitor them?
No country is taking such a cavalier attitude toward fighters. There are countries that do believe that some of the fighters who come back have been disillusioned by their experience, participated in no terrorist activities while they were in Syria. And they believe that, in this case, those fighters should be monitored rather than incarcerated. That is a decision those countries make based upon the evidence.
Is that in compliance with UN Resolution 2178, that view?
I'm not a lawyer myself. I'd have to take a look at that issue. But I think that there are different approaches to how you deal with returning fighters, particularly ones who have not carried out any evidence of any
Look, I don't care if you're just peeling potatoes in the mess. If you're part of the ISIS army, you belong in prison until this war against Islamic extremism is over. That seems to be what UN Security Council Resolution 2178 said, and I hope your chart will be, that you'll add to your chart a list of those countries that have told us that we do not think we should criminalize those of our citizens and residents who went to ISIS, joined the Army, but say they didn't actually kill anybody.
There's also an issue, sir, of being able to prove in a court of law this kind of activity. None of the countries
that's fine,
have
but
people on the ground in Syria who can come to a courtroom to testify. So again, I think our partners use different tools depending upon what they know about a particular individual in the case. That's all I would say.
The Chair recognizes the gentlelady